Hey everybody, Mike Barra here, Seahawk Boy Mike B. Welcome back to Seahawk Boys TV. It's a Sunday afternoon in beautiful, windy Las Vegas, Nevada, and it's time to do another Seahawks video. The subject today, which I didn't expect to be doing, I figured I'd be watching the Formula One race right now, is a rumor that's come up that's being talked about in the Seahawks Twitterverse and the Seahawks blogiverse and everywhere else you might want to talk about it as to whether or not DK Metcalf should be traded. Is DK Metcalf on the trading block? Well, a lot of people in the Seahawk land are saying no. I was kind of leaning towards saying no, but after thinking about it a little bit and looking at some stuff, now I'm beginning to think the answer might be yes. All right, everybody, welcome back to Seahawk Boys TV. I am Seahawk Boy Mike with you on a Sunday afternoon, May the 5th, Cinco de Mayo. May the 4th be with you, and Revenge of the 5th is today. So Revenge of the 5th for all you geeky Star Wars fans like Seahawks Brandon Nelson. Okay, so I wanted to address this because he put out a video, Nelson put out a video yesterday, which, like most of his videos, at least my impression after watching it once, is that once again, I don't think this guy knows what he's talking about, and it's pretty weird. But the whole thing came up over the question of whether or not DK Metcalf is or should be on the trading block, and his position was pretty straightforward. No, he shouldn't be on a trading block. They're not going to help you for at least a year if you get draft picks for the guy. And the best you're gonna do is he wouldn't do it unless there were 2 first-round picks involved. Well, we're going to discuss the fact that you're not going to get multiple first-round picks for DK Metcalf. Okay. Now, I love DK Metcalf. I think he's one of the top 3 to 5 receivers in the NFL, and I don't see any significant difference in physical ability between him and whoever's considered number one. A lot of people think Justin Jefferson is number one. That's mostly because he kicks ass in fantasy leagues, because Kirk Cousins was throwing the ball all over the place, and he caught a lot of those balls for a lot of yards, which, by the way, don't win football games. But Seahawks have played the Vikings twice since Justin Jefferson went there. I don't remember him making a play against us. And honestly, I've never seen him make a big play in the fourth quarter. There are people who assure me that he can, but I've never seen it. So again, I think you're in a situation where guys like Jefferson are super overrated. Hi, Myrtle Mayhem. How you doing? I have, wow, I got 6 viewers and 1 commenter. I like that. Anyway, guys, I think DK is a great player. However, we have to face some realities about him, which we'll discuss we'll discuss this in a little bit. This whole thing started with the Standard, which is a Pittsburgh Steelers Twitter sphere page, and he posted this on May 1st, and the statement is the Steelers contacted the Seahawks about a potential trade for wide receiver DK Metcalf. They weren't turned down, but were told, that's no apostrophe there, but we're told a deal wouldn't be considered until after June 1st. What are your thoughts? Would you like to see Metcalf in the black and gold? Per Benjamin Albright. This is fake news for a second or less. Absolutely. Yeah. You crazy. So that's the story, and that's what he addressed. And so why don't we just go over and watch a little bit of what Seahawks Brandon Nelson had to say yesterday. Let's play it and hope we can hear the audio from my speakers.
Metcalf now saves basically no money. If you trade him now, you're taking on $23 million dead, which is only $1.5 million less than the $24.5 million he is due. So that's not really doing anything for anybody. So that's why you can see the team is saying we're not doing anything until after June 1st. Now, if you do it after June 1st, that dead cap hit gets split across 2 off seasons. You have $11.5 million dead this year, meaning you're saving 13 million, which is a lot. That would actually get you under the cap and allow you to afford all your rookies and your practice squad. But you then have to deal with another 11.5 million in 2025. So the money doesn't disappear, it just gets spread out across 2 years. So that's obviously more palatable. That's at least worthy of some level of conversation. Like trading Metcalf pre June 1st is just completely it's completely insane. It doesn't make any sense. You're giving away a player to save basically no money. You're going to pay the player basically the full amount of money you were going to pay him anyway to play on another team. That doesn't make any dang sense. Now, post June 1st is better, but consider that at this point in the offseason, that cap space will only do you so much. It's not like you're freeing up cap space before free agency starts and you can go out and spend a bunch of money now. Most of the players that you would want are gone. So you just have to deal with the stuff you already have. So it's not like doing this is going to allow you to go spend a bunch of money that you otherwise would not have had. You are going to be able to afford things easier, but there are other ways to accomplish that. That's what I always try to say here. If you need to clear a little bit of cap space to be able to pay your rookies and pay your practice squad, there are many other ways to handle that don't involve trading one of your best young players. So I'm still not really hearing that as being a viable solution. Now,
The reality is, that's his take on it. But the reality is that none of those things you really said are true. DK Metcalf is not one of our best young players. He's a mid-year second contract, mid-career second contract veteran. He's 27 years old. And as amazingly fast as he is, he's going to be 28 this next season. And then he's going to be 29, and he's going to have to get paid next year. The most recent contract by Amon-Ra St. Brown was in the range of what, 30 million a year on average. So you're going to have to raise DK's pay to 30 million per year to keep him around. On top of that, you don't have a quarterback that can consistently get him the ball. If we had a great quarterback on this team, if we had a Patrick Mahomes or a Joe Burrow or a Justin Herbert or even a Brock Purdy who could fling the ball all over the place, and we had an offensive-minded coach who would work on ways to get DK the ball, DK would be probably the most explosive receiver in the NFL. He certainly would be in the top 3 to 5. And a lot of times people now just talk about him in the top 20, mostly because of East Coast bias against West Coast players and the fact that he just doesn't get that many targets as he would in other systems. In Pete Carroll's system, there were games when DK barely touched the ball. Oh, well, they took that away from us. You don't, this is the NFL. It's 2024. You don't fucking let him take it away from you, Pete. So maybe we'll have a better attitude under Ben Grubb. Maybe they'll get the ball to DK more, but I think the problem is at the quarterback position. As I have told you before, it's that we've got Geno Smith, who's on the decline at 34 years old, and Sam Howell, who's not really done anything yet in the NFL except lead the NFL in interceptions. So what we're worried about and what we're dealing with is how much are we going to get out of this guy? And we're going to have to sign him to a new contract either this year or next year. Now you can say, okay, well, we can sign him to a new contract this year and spread out the signing bonus and spread out the roster bonuses and all that crap. And we can get more cap space. But is it enough? And the answer is no. We're going to have to do some other things. Now, you'd have to do some things like cut or trade or something along those lines with Draymond Jones. Nobody is going to take Draymond Jones' current contract with his level of performance last year. You can forget that. There's no trade. You're going to have to cut him. And then you don't have Draymond Jones and you just replace him with Byron Murphy. So it's a wash. So you haven't done anything to improve your team. So does it make any sense to trade a 27, going to be 28-year-old player in the late prime? He's entering the late prime of his career this year. Okay. After 29, the odds are that DK will start to decline. And, given that, what should we do? Should we seriously consider this? Now, I'm going to tell you something else. You know who's behind this rumor? I'll tell you who's behind this rumor. It's a guy who used to wear number 3 for the Seattle Seahawks, who's now wearing number 3 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you know he's in their ear saying, "Get me DK, get me DK, get me DK, get me DK." You know he's doing that, and that's where this rumor is coming from. And people say, "Okay, well, this story is baloney." I don't think it's baloney. Because if it was BS, if it wasn't true, you wouldn't have the part in there about, "Well, get back to us after June 1st." You would just hear a rumor, "Well, we inquired with the Seahawks about DK Metcalf, and they said no." They apparently did not say no. That indicates there is something going on here. So let's just assume it's the Steelers. And Russ is behind it because he wants a big play, boom time, deep ball threat that he can throw the ball to. And they would have quite an offense with Russ pulling the trigger and DK Metcalf and some of the other players they have on their offense going downfield. They would have a good offense. There's no way around that. And that's how you win in 2024. So let's look at the salary cap implications, because he implied that, "Oh, well, you're going to have all this dead money and you're not going to be able to spend any money and yada, yada, yada." But that's, again, not really true. And dead money has got to be the most overrated thing in football. Okay, so let's look at the Seahawks' current salary cap situation. Let me reload it here. Right now for 2024, we are 400,000, give or take, over the salary cap. Okay, we are over the cap right now because we just signed Byron Murphy to his rookie contract. In 2025, as things currently stand, we are $663,000 over the cap. We are over the cap for the next 2 seasons. Our number one cap hit right now is Geno Smith, who, again, if I was running the team, would not be on the team, but that's just me. And DK Metcalf, age 27, 5 years, going into his 6th, 7th, and 8th years. Those are DK's best years. After the 8 years, he's not going to be around. So you either have to give him a new deal or you have to cut a bunch of other guys, because right now you need about 12 or 13 million dollars to sign the rest of your draft picks, account for practice squad and injured reserve. Now, every year the Seahawks use this, "Oh, well, we have to account for the injured reserve. We don't really have that much cap space. We have to account for injured reserve." It was just a way for Pete Carroll and John Schneider to avoid being pressured to actually do something in free agency. This year they did. They went and signed. They did what I've been advocating for years. They signed some solid NFL bodies to their need spots. Linebacker, safety, 2 linebackers, 2 safeties, to the point that you didn't really desperately need to draft anybody there. So, but that's left them over the cap. So how do you solve the cap problem? Well, you can't get rid of Geno Smith because you didn't draft Spencer Rattler. Had you drafted Spencer Rattler with either of your 2 4th-round picks, 118 and 121, or 136, the first pick in the 5th round, then you could say, "Okay, we're going to go with Sam Howell, who we're so happy with, who we like so much. We're just going to go with him and Rattler at quarterback, and we're not going to keep Geno," which the time to do that would be before they paid him a bonus. But that's not in the works, and you couldn't even get a 6-pack of beer for Geno at this point, with 34 years old and a $24 million cap number, $26 million cap number. But what happens if you cut DK Metcalf? Well, if you cut him, you go even further into debt in the cap. Now you're $3,893,000 over the cap. So you're not going to do that. What you can do is you can trade him. And if you trade him pre-6-1, you're saving $9.5 million under the cap, which gives you maybe reasonably close to the amount you need to do all that other business, but it leaves you with no space. However, what the Seahawks apparently told the Steelers is, "Come back to us after June 1st. So we will trade him post June 1. Well, when you do that, you get $16.6 million in cap space, which is not only enough to pay off your rookie class, all the rookie salaries and injury reserve and all that stuff, you have some money you could go spend on veterans. You could make a trade around the trade deadline, bring somebody in, or you could acquire other veterans that haven't been signed yet. Now, Seahawks Brandon Nelson makes such a big deal out of the dead cap money. Here's the dead cap money up above. It's the number 7.5 million. They say it's 7.5 million. Um, Spotrac, which I do not use because first of all, I don't use it because why didn't you call it Sport Track instead of Spotrac? Doesn't make any sense. They say 11.5 million. And then you pay 11.5 million next year because if you go into 2025, you've still got dead cap for DK Metcalf. He's still on the books. But Seahawks retard Nelson doesn't seem to understand that this isn't money that you pay. When you trade a player, the other team assumes his entire contract, the remainder of his contract. And I don't know. Let's click on again. They're having some issues with going to the contract page, at least on this browser. So they would simply pick up what's left, and it's going to be a smaller number than that. His cap number with somebody else is going to be less than that. It's going to be 24.5 million, I think, minus the dead money, which is either 11.5 or 7.5, depending on who you trust. So it would make a lot of sense in 2024 because with this one act, you could pay off everything you need to pay off, all your debts, as such as they are, your rookie cap, and all the other nonsense that they always talk about. But one thing, and here's the thing: that dead money, that's not money you spend. You don't have. It's just on the books. It's on the books for this year, and it's on the books for next year. It just means that your cap is 7.5 million less in 2025 than it would have been if you didn't trade him. And some people are like, well, you can't have that much dead money. You can't have dead money. That's money you can't spend. Dude, you don't have any money to spend. You don't have any money to spend in 2024 to even sign your own draft picks. You don't have any money to spend in 2025 without gutting the roster, which I think maybe is what they should do. Anyway, they should do it. But anyway, but look what happens up here on the numbers under cap space, under 2024 and 2025. Look what happens when you trade DK post 6-1 in 2025. Remember, you're almost $663,000 in the hole in 2025 if you keep DK on the roster, if you don't give him a new deal, which is going to be wildly expensive. What happens is you save almost 17 million in cap space this year, at least according to Over the Cap. Spotrac may have different numbers, but they're similar. And you go from 663,000 in the hole, 21.337 million in the black for 2025. So from a financial standpoint, it makes total sense to trade DK Metcalf right now, post June 1. The dead money is irrelevant. Dead money doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is cap space. If you don't trade him, you don't have any dead money. But if you do trade him, gosh, you have what, 21, 22 million in dead space, dead cap space, but you also have 21 million to spend and 16 million to spend. So from a financial standpoint, you cannot argue that this doesn't make sense. And then, of course, that next year you got Geno Smith in 2025. You can cut him and save another 25 million. You can cut Draymond Jones or restructure him, save another 16 million. Same thing with Tyler Lockett. Boom, boom, boom. Get rid of those four guys. Hell, let's throw Leonard Williams into it because he's going to be outplayed. Probably, if everything all of you guys say about how great Byron Murphy is, Leonard Williams might be out of the job. Look at that. I just went to $92.3 million in cap space. And I would have whatever draft picks I'm able to acquire in the DK Metcalf trade. to restructure this roster. Now, you say, who's going to catch the ball? Well, isn't that what you drafted Jackson Smith-Njigba for? I think if they were really seriously thinking about this, they would have drafted a wide receiver in this draft, and they didn't. The guy I would have taken, it's up on my Twitter X, Seahawk Boy Mike Barra. The guy I would have taken was Brendan Rice. Could have taken him in the 7th round. Again, here's my Twitter X, Seahawk Boy Mike Barra. I have 1,000 posts already? That can't be right. Really? Wow. That's awesome. There I am doing the broadcast right now. So there's no question that you save massive amounts of money if you, in fact, trade DK Metcalf post June 1. That's money you can go out and acquire other players at other positions with. That's money you can spend on, I don't know, free agent quarterback. You can, if Sam Howell balls out, you can give him an extension, small extension, because 1 year is not enough to base a big extension on. You could go after DK. You could go after Dak Prescott. You could go after Dak Prescott with that money that you're going to save next year. That's a hell of a lot of money. So there are lots of things the Seahawks could do if they traded DK. Now, then we come to the question of what are you going to get back? And again, Seahawks Brendan Nelson, because of the dead money, wasn't willing to trade DK Metcalf for anything less than 2 first-round picks. Again, because of the perception of him around the league as a troublemaker and the fact that he doesn't get that many touches because of our offensive system and our quarterbacks, you're not going to get that for him. But if you look at the comps for DK Metcalf, let's look at a couple of comps for him. First is Marquise Brown. Marquise Brown was a first-round pick by the Baltimore Ravens, if I recall correctly, in the 2019 NFL draft. He has pretty decent numbers, 313 receptions, 3,664 yards, 28 touchdowns. He was traded in 2022 to the Arizona Cardinals. Brown and a Ravens 3rd-round pick were sent to the Cardinals in return for the 23rd overall pick in the 2022 draft. So they gave up Brown and a 3rd-round pick and got a 1st-round pick back. He's now signed with the Kansas City Chiefs. A.J. Brown, who is his college teammate, DK's college teammate, is now with the Eagles, and 379 receptions, 5,947 yards, 42 touchdowns, 2nd-team All-Pro, 3-time Pro Bowler, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. He was traded in the 2022 draft also for the 18th overall pick. So he was traded for a 1st-round pick, and Tennessee also received a 3rd-round pick. So he went for a 1st and a 3rd. That's kind of what I'm thinking for DK Metcalf. Let's look at that tweet. I wish my things on the fly would cooperate. Well, DK Metcalf. Let's go here. Let's go through this. DK Metcalf has in his career 372 receptions, 5,332 yards, and 43 touchdowns. He's only made 2nd-team All-Pro once and Pro Bowl twice. A.J. Brown has 379 receptions, 6,000 yards, and 42 touchdowns. Very, very comparable. And Marquise Brown has 313 receptions, 3,644 yards, way fewer yards, and 28 touchdowns. And also, Deebo Samuel was in that draft. So there were some really good receivers in that draft. And I think Terry McLaurin might have been in that draft too. So DK is on a par with these guys. He's better than Marquise Brown. And he's on a par with AJ Brown, who went quite a few picks in front of him. So what are you likely to get for DK Metcalf? I think you can get a first and a third from the Steelers, hopefully both in 2025. You might have to go a first and a second, and the second is a 2026 pick, or you might end up getting a first and a third, like a first in 2025 and a third in 2026. That's just maybe the way it works out. But what you save in cap space is I'm in 2025. Sorry. Let's trade post 6-1. You get $36 million in cap space. So you're going to get a first and a third and $26 million in cap space if you move DK Metcalf. And it seems like that there would be takers. It seems like the Steelers, their interest is logical. With Russ flinging the ball around, with DK as a deep threat, with that other receiver, what's their other receiver's name? I forget his name. It's Steelers. Where are the Steelers? I know it's really scintillating watching me. God, what is the deal here? Okay, I forget his name, but there seem to be issues. I want to say something like Witherspoon or something, but that's not his name. Steelers roster. I should know. I should know the name of this receiver. That's why it's bugging me. Pickens, George Pickens, and DK Metcalf, with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields as your quarterback. You just added Troy Fautanu, Zach Frazier, Roman Wilson, Peyton Wilson, the linebacker, Mason McCormick at guard. I think the Steelers' offense could be really good with those guys. So it makes sense why the Steelers would be willing to part with a first and a third next year. That would give the Seahawks $21 million in cap space next year, which they can by cutting Geno and some other guys. They could easily get up to $92 million. So they could either go after a guy like Dak Prescott if he makes it to free agency, or they could use that cap space to acquire assets to trade, because then you'd have 2 firsts, a second, 2 thirds, 2 fourths, because you're going to get a compensatory fourth, and 2 fifths because you're going to get a compensatory fifth. That's a lot of juice. If there's a guy in the draft like Quinn Ewers, who's the only guy I see next year being worth trading up for, you could trade up for him. And you could sign back a receiver to replace DK with all that cap space that you're going to generate for next year. Probably not this year, but next year. You might be able to sign a veteran who's on the free agency market. Now, what does it do to your chances this year? Well, it kills them. But I question again, is this a playoff team? Is this a contending team? They might be a playoff team if everything falls into place and they don't have a lot of injuries. Seahawks might be a playoff team. They might be a 9-8 backdoor playoff team. But are they a contending team? No. Not serious Super Bowl contenders. They're going to need to go get a quarterback for that. Or Sam Howell's going to have to shock the world. So if you're going to take 2 steps forward, 1 step back, maybe trading DK Metcalf before you have to pay him, $28 or $30 million a year to keep him. As he's getting into his late prime, this is the perfect time to trade him. And I hate to say it because I don't want to trade him. What I wanted was for them to go out and get a quarterback who had a future. Justin Fields, Michael Penix, Spencer Rattler. Trade up to the number 1 pick last year and get CJ Stroud. Imagine this team with CJ Stroud. Then there would be no consideration of trading DK Metcalf. None. But we don't have that quarterback. So it depends on how unrealistic and delusional John Schneider is. If he's not delusional, I think the smart play here is to trade DK Metcalf for the cap space this year, for the cap space next year. Dead money doesn't matter, only cap space matters, and you're getting $36 million in cap space you wouldn't have if you don't trade him at post June 1. You have enough money and enough draft picks, 2 firsts, a second, 2 thirds, 2 fourths, and 2 fifths to get a quarterback in the draft or to go sign somebody like Dak if he makes it to free agency. You have all sorts of possibilities on the table, all kinds of them. Next year should be a much more interesting offseason even than this year. So to answer the question is, should they trade DK Metcalf? I think they should face the reality that they're not winning the Super Bowl this year. I think they should face the reality that they're going to have a hard time even being competitive in the NFC West. I think right now we're 3rd. We might be able to crawl ahead of the Rams into 2nd, but they're really well coached and they've added a lot of players. So if you finish 3rd in the NFC West, out of the playoffs, losing record, even if it's 8-9. Your quarterback is 34 years old. He didn't get the job done. Your young quarterback didn't really show you that much. And you're sitting there next off season looking at DK Metcalf, who wants to be paid $30 million a year. And who can blame him because he's that good? Is that a good idea? Is that something you're looking forward to? Or is that a nightmare scenario? It's a nightmare scenario. So I think the answer to the question that's raised is it time to trade DK Metcalf? Well, if you can get a first and a third in 2025 for him, at this point, I have to say, and I'm sad about this, but the answer is yes.